start over here with mosaic. Mosaics were started in North Korea in the 60s. It's not a traditional form that they have, but this sort of thing you will see basically for two reasons. You'll get it used in the first mosaics are in the subway, and they're about another sort of metre higher than this, and a good 30 metres long, extolling the virtues of socialism. And the reason why Suhanya and I selected this piece was it was almost to answer everyone's expectations. I'm sure that when you heard North Korea having an art exhibition, this is the sort of thing that you would imagine that they would put on. It's very, very simple. It's the theme that we decided to take with the North Koreans was to look at industrial landscapes. And we chose, by luck actually, this factory called the Kangson Steelworks. And it's where basically their philosophy of Cholema, speed, working with a very high speed, came from. After the war, after the Korean War, 1950 to 53, or as the North Koreans call it, the Victorious Fatherland Liberation War, the country was totally demolished. The Pyongyang city was flattened. There was more napalm used in the Korean War than there was in Vietnam, to give you an idea of the extent of damage. And the leader, Kim Il-sung, at that time said, we will rebuild the country at Cholema speed. And Cholema is this fabled winged horse that can do 400 kilometers in a day. And there's now, just as we made the commission, there is in fact, this year, November last year, they rebuilt this Cholema speed campaign. So this was the second time, and these are these victorious lot coming, having fulfilled the work quota. This is the work quota with red lines. They're the winners of the work quota. They get garlands and they'll get sort of other rewards. So it's a very simplistic piece. There's nothing really, there's no hidden metaphor there. There's not anyone trying to say something other than celebration. So I think that sort of sets up the theme. Now, a lot of people will comment and say, oh, this art, this whole room reminds me of, 50 years ago in China or what have you. The idea is that this piece and maybe the piece at the far wall is 1999. Yes, certainly those two places will remind you of China in the old days, sort of maybe during the Cultural Revolution, 66 to 76, which North Korea has never had. But what I'm going to take you through is, and the reason why I became so passionate about this exhibition, is the pieces that are behind here. So on the mosaic, that's it. I mean, it's an amazing piece of work. It came from an original oil painting. We approved of that idea, and then it gets built on the floor. Workers going all around it. They do these outlining on the floor on sort of A5 sheets, and then they sketch them in, so you actually get the sort of gradations of the face, and then they build the mosaics around them. And if you actually look at the faces, I mean, for this guy here, I mean, he's got an enormous amount of sort of blue dots within him, not just flesh tones. And I think what's beautiful here is the way that they fill in, like the earlobes, the Adam's apple, and this treatment of shade is superb. So as a piece of socialist realism, it doesn't come much finer than that. The magnolia here, this tree, this plant, everything in North Korea, if I was a North Korean guide, I would be telling you about the height, how many tiles were in it, how long it was, etc. And very often the dates and hours, they refer to also the leader's birth, etc., etc. The magnolia, this is the sort of the country's national emblem, North Korea's national emblem, not South Korea's national emblem. So that's that piece. It's as simple and straightforward as that. Don't go reading too much into it. I think what I'll do, so if you're all happy with that and happy at this lightning speed that I'm doing things and this sort of horrible echo, I'll take you next to the woodcuts, Jakanori. And if you all sort of stand that way, I'll pick out 3 of them and talk about them. Oh yeah, is that my second? I think North Korean art is very allegorical. Everything tells a story. And no better so than the woodcuts or this what they call chosunhwa, which is sort of thematic art. I haven't sort of, this is not a rehearse, so I'll just go and pick a few. This is a mate of mine, Huang In Jae. So, the artists I know individually. This is a lovely old boy, he's this big. He's, I think, nearly in his 70s, and he came to the studio the other day in Beijing. and I was sat around, and I left him at a desk full of sort of contemporary art and from everything, sort of to news, the whole lot, and you could see him flicking through them out of the back of my eye, just going, rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. So I think there's a great belief that, you know, we want to believe that artists here have got a, you know, they're intellectualizing everything, and that they want to perhaps paint pictures of the great leader sort of being stabbed or sort of with breasts or what have you in a sort of Chinese style, which I think we've come to associate with Chinese art, this sort of mocking of leadership. I think there's, not knowing too much about my history, but in China, in this period of 66 to 76, the Cultural Revolution, there's a group of artists called the No Name Group. And rather than, they also had a reaction against sort of the system, but it wasn't against the leadership. It was basically they wanted to paint, and painterly paint, if you like. Paintings such as, you know, landscapes or seascapes were not revolutionary. It was seen as black paintings, i.e. paintings that weren't allowed. Now in DPRK, there's an enormous breadth of freedom within this vein. So you do in fact get people doing still life, right through to portraiture, and then right through to sort of commissioned works such as these. This is a joyful scene of this. This has sort of other meanings in it. This is the Taedong hills up in the north. They've been replanted, forests have been taken down, and in replacement has been a potato harvest. So this is basically comes off simply because of the great arduous march. This is the arduous march, which is this period of starvation in North Korea. So this is the country being rebuilt after this period. And it shows couples coming up, young couples coming, so they'll actually be having left the cities or other areas of population to come and repopulate this area. So that's the theme that you'll see again. Motives such as the storks coming over as well, associating new growth and freedom. What we got here? This is a sweet little one. This is again very similar to there's an, hopefully you pick up the little metaphors. Very similar, again, another work group here. We have, this is the torture rangan, which is basically another sort of progressive unit. If you do well, you do award. So this girl is putting in her an individual merit. And if she's not doing well, it will be a self-criticism later, but she would stand up at the factory and say, you know, I have not been doing well because such and such and such. And then it's up to her colleagues to support her. It's not, you know, it looks very draconian, but this is how the system works. There's quite a good film by Peter Fleury on that, actually following a textile worker and how they do work. The artists have a very similar process. As we develop the art with the North Koreans, every week there'll be a team leader and they'll have a criticism of that work. It doesn't mean that people are being denounced. It is purely constructive, saying let's, you know, try this method, move over here, or we don't like what you're doing there. Every morning in the studio, they have sort of an hour sort of sketch to warm up, and then they get going. And they paint 4 days a week. If there's a piece that's in a rush, they will do more. But basically it's 4 days a week. Friday is a cooperative day where they will do work for the studio or outside. It's a cooperative. Everyone from the top will be sent out to the streets, maybe to clean the streets, brush up, what have you. Saturday is a political study day, and Sunday is a day off. So when you're commissioning works in North Korea, you also have to remember that the timelines you're involved with, they do tend to work to these sort of dates. So to actually get them to put a shift on is quite tricky. But there we see sort of two girls working on this. There's a lovely little story at the moment where women have said that there's been a little bit more freedom in North Korea, and women have been able to sell goods on the street behind the back of the housing. There's a sort of saying that goes, men, they're about as useful as turning the light on in the day. Sort of not much use, because at least the men are sort of caught in the old system, they're having to go to work, but women have slightly more freedom.